Hi, I'm Eddie of Eddie's Reef Aquaria. Before I go into today's topic, I hope that all of you had a great Christmas or holiday and a happy new year, and I wish the best for all of you out there. Now, today's video topic is going to be about coral placement and concerns. I went ahead and I sat down and I thought about it, and I made 4 bullet points for placements of any coral and then concerns of any corals. So let's take a deep dive into it and check it out. Hold on. Okay, the bullet points that I came up with, coral placement and concerns, I'm going to talk about all these topics, all these bullet points, but I'm going to keep the camera as you see it on the full shot of the tank. Then afterwards, I'm going to show you some examples of what I've talked about here on the bullet points. Okay, so let's get started. First 4 bullet points is coral placement. And this is, going back how I've always done things when it comes to reef keeping and the new school of thought. These are the 4 bullet points that I came up with when it came to coral placements. Okay, number 1, all corals should be acclimated properly. Now, by this I mean usually what I use, and even the pet shops use, the drip method. Now, afterwards, place the coral at the bottom of your substrate for at least 2 weeks. This is related to the acclimation of lighting, because when it came to the acclimation of the water parameter, temperatures and all that, that's where the coral is actually going to get acclimated with the drip method. Now, I know that there's other people, school of thoughts, that they don't acclimate corals. They only acclimate fish. Well, I kind of disagree with that. I think that everything that goes into your reef tank should definitely be acclimated. And then the second bullet point is where you should, once the acclimation process has been done, where should you actually place the corals? Well, the rule of thumb, soft corals should be placed at the lower quadrant of your aquarium. And then LPS corals should be placed, I would say, within the middle quadrant. And then, of course, SPS corals, of course, including the acros, should be placed at the upper quadrant of your aquarium. Now, the next thing, when a coral is properly acclimated, they can be placed at any area of your aquarium, but always considering the water flow and light intensity. Except for SPS corals, other corals can be placed at higher quadrants, knowing they have to be slowly acclimated to just higher light par value. Now, what I mean by that final bullet point when it comes to coral placement is that, for instance, let's say that you have, on the left lower part of the tank, right there I have a blasto, that beautiful red button-like with a neon yellowish green in the middle. Okay, that coral can be placed on the bottom quadrant, as you see that I have, or can be placed in the middle quadrant. Now, if you want to place it higher, since this coral I already have it acclimated and it's on the bottom part, but what I mean by this last bullet point on the topic of coral placement, what I would have to do is just bring it up, like let's say a little bit to the middle quadrant of the tank. Not from here, go ahead and put it all the way on the top, like let's say on the upper right hand corner where you see that an acropora, just go ahead and place it there. You can't do that. You have to condition it, acclimate it to bring it up to that level. So eventually, I'm a firm believer that all corals, I would really exclude like the mushrooms, like what you see down here on the lower left, the Ricordia yuma, those type of corals, the Ricordia yuma and the other type of mushroom yuma, those really should stay from the middle to the lower quadrant, preferably the lower quadrant, but not that type of coral is what I'm referring to, that you really shouldn't bring him up. But other than that, to be honest with you, that blasto, that other brain coral that I have there, hey, you can go ahead and bring it up. And as a matter of fact, the Fiji yellow, it's there, but I had brought it up to the middle quadrant to give it more current to see if it would shed. It didn't. I brought it to the other side, to the right-hand side of the tank. It didn't do it, and I brought it down, and it's doing fine. So that's what I mean when it comes on this on the last bullet point, that except for SPS, all other corals can be placed at higher quadrants, knowing they have to be slowly acclimated to just higher light par value. That's what I meant by moving them around and all that. Okay, now we're going to go into the concerns of corals. When you go ahead and you buy a coral and you have issues with it. Now, these are the 4 bullet points that I came up with. The first one, corals in general. Now, when I say in general, I'm talking about the mother colony, can be either from a weak strain or a strong strain. Now, if fragged, and if that specific coral is from a weak strain, no matter the acclimation process used or placement, or the feeding that you give it and all that, they will not do well. Yet, on the other side of the coin, a stronger strain coral, the mother coral, I'm talking about now the mother coral, when fragged, it'll do great, no matter after acclimation where you place it. Now, this has happened to me in numerous times with numerous corals. What happens is, when I'm talking about weak strains, is for whatever reason, when it came from the mother colony, whatever reason, when they pulled it out of the ocean, whatever reason that coral, genetically, DNA, or whatever you want to call it, had a weak DNA, or it's a weak strain. So what I'm talking about is that when you get that mother colony, then you frag it. Now, keeping in mind that that mother colony is already a bit weak, you frag it, then you put it, they go ahead, they acclimate it and all that, and they put it on quarantine, and they put it for sale at the LFS. Okay, there, it might seem great. It might look fantastic because remember, and this is, it's common practice, and I've confirmed it with all different types of LFS, and I've been in front there seeing what I'm going to tell you now. All pet shops, the object, of course, is to sell their corals, not to have a big die out. So what do? They feed them big time. They feed them around the clock. They feed them 40 million types of foods to keep them alive, so they'll be healthy and they can go out the door and sell. But the problem is that you have to take into consideration that all these LFS, their system, their filtering system is a commercial system. It's a system that they can feed 2 and 3 times a day, their corals, their fish and all that, and their nutrient levels might go up a little bit, but not that much. So they have that luxury that they can do that. Now, no matter how high-end your filtering system is, your life support system is, I strongly believe, and this is me, my disclaimer, Eddie of Eddie's Reef Aquaria, I strongly believe that no way, if you feed the same amount of foods that all these pet shops feed daily, and the amount of times daily, if you were to do that in your tank, I guarantee you that your tank will actually crash. Your nutrients, your PO4 will go up so high that you will do a complete wipeout on your tank. So you can't feed as much as they feed on the LFS. So that's where this comes into play. All places, it doesn't matter where you go, they are going to feed it monstrosity, big amounts of foods nutrients for corals and vitamins to keep them alive. But going back to the strain, if the strain of that coral is weak from the mother colony, then it was fragged, and then they have it there. Of course, they're going to feed it and feed it. So now that weak strain got a little weaker when they fragged it, and they have it there. But of course, they're feeding it, they're like, shall we call it, on life support. But then now you get it and you purchase it. You bring it here. It comes out of that water. You acclimate it here, and you introduce it to your tank. And then that's where I come into that second bullet point, that if it comes from a weak strain, no matter what you do, no matter how much you acclimated that coral, no matter how much food, nutrients, vitamins, and all that, it's simply just not going to make it because it came from a weak strain. But you don't see that, at the pet shop. Matter of fact, not too long ago, I had a similar incident where I went to the LFS. I saw beautiful coral. It was great, a frag. I brought it here. I did these procedures that I'm talking to you about. I acclimated it. I feed my corals every other day. Now I'm up to daily and all that. And it only lasted around 24 hours. 24 hours, it started to fade, and actually died. Well, that apparently is a perfect example of what I'm talking about. It was a coral that came from a weak strain. So what topped it off, what finished it off, was that final change of the water from the LFS, and then here, my parameters and the different water conditions and all that. That's what did it, and I lost it in 24 hours. Luckily, I know these people. I took it back. They said, no, don't worry. Pick another coral. But even then, they said, but don't pick the same type of coral, because they themselves knew what I'm talking to you about. Those other frags that came from the same mother colony apparently was from a weak strain. Now, what is said also, when it comes to the purchase of corals, it is said that, let's say, out of 5 corals, if you go right now and you purchase 5 corals and you introduce them to your aquarium, you do everything correct, acclimation, blah, 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 on and on. There's an average, statistically speaking, that out of those 5, 3 are going to make it. And there's 2 that are not. And then the final bullet point that I needed to talk to you all about is, upon placing a coral and you observe it and it's not doing well, like let's say not opening, or the color is fading, or you can go, if you see that, you can go ahead and try to move it around. Put it in different places of your reef aquarium. And that shock, that difference of, let's say, light, water flow, and et cetera, that might actually do the trick, and it'll actually get the coral to flourish. And I do have an example of that, which I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to stop here, but I'm going to take some close-up shots of the tank, and I'll show you what I mean by what I've been talking now recently. So just hold on one second. Now here we have an example of when I was talking on the bullet points about moving corals around. This is Arganiapora, green, it's got like metallic feelers, beautiful coral. I got it also on Black Friday. And I placed it on the bottom on the substrate. It did well, but then it started to close up and close up. So what do? I moved it around. I went ahead. First, I moved it a little bit towards the front on the substrate. And it kind of started to do a little better. I said, wait a minute, maybe it needs more flow, and maybe it needs more light. So I moved it up here, I've glued it, and voila, look. It's opening up, it's happier. I'm feeding it every day. Like today, I feed by Reef Nutritions. I went ahead and I feed phytofeast. Tomorrow, Reefoids. Then Wednesday, oyster eggs. And then Friday, phytofeast or Reef Chili. And then, I go on and on. But look, this is an example of what I'm talking about. If you see a coral is after acclimating it properly and all that, you see that, hey, it's not doing that well, or it's getting lighter, it's fainting away or something, move it around. And this is the other sample, Monte Cap, a purple Monte Cap. I got it way back. I placed it, of course, for a period of 2 weeks on the substrate. Acclimation, I acclimated a drip method like I mentioned on my bullet points. And then I moved it to the side more or less where the Goniopora is at. Now, it started to get fainter and fainter and fainter, and it was losing color. So here we go. Move it around. I went ahead, I said, wait a minute. It's an SPS coral, so let's go ahead and move it up. So I moved it way up here, as you see it, right over there, and I glued it. And guess what? By moving it, in other words, more light, and it's more or less aligned with the MP10, perfect. It started to gain color, and now it's the same bright purplish cap that I got way back, and is doing phenomenal. It's happy and it's starting to grow. This one is not an encrusting type. So that's examples that I've given you of either the acclimation process or either the moving around on corals. So there you have it. I hope you enjoyed the video, found it interesting, educational, and fun. If you liked it, hit the thumbs up and subscribe to my channel. Next to it, there's that little bell, that's the notification bell. So when you hit that, you activate your notifications on your device, and you'll be the first ones to know that Eddie's Reef Aquaria uploaded a video, which, of course, I know it's a broken record, but I always say this, it's usually weekly. As I say at the end, happy reefing, and until next time, bye-bye.